Welcome to the Dementia-Friendly Communities Introductory Workshop. This recording is intended to provide you with a high-level overview of what dementia is and what we can each do to help make our communities more dementia-friendly. Some of the information we talk about can cause an emotional response. You may be living with dementia yourself or caring for someone who is living with dementia and have deeper questions than we will be covering during this workshop. If you find you need to talk about anything you hear in this recording or have questions about the dementia journey, I strongly encourage you to connect with the First Link Dementia Helpline at 1-800-936-6033. The numbers will also be on a slide at the end of the presentation and in the helpful resources document at the bottom of this video. Let's begin our presentation with a message from David, a lived experience partner with the Alzheimer's Society of BC, about the importance of becoming dementia educated and creating a more welcoming and inclusive society for people who are affected by dementia.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today and taking the first step towards becoming a dementia-friendly society. My name is David, and I was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia about 5 years ago. I was a bit shocked at the diagnosis at the time, but I've definitely learned to live with it. I'm an avid golfer, although a poor one, and I go to the gym regularly. I enjoy traveling. I love to stay involved in the community, Chilliwack, where I am now. I've been really fortunate to have the support and encouragement of my wonderful family and amazing friends. But many people who are living with dementia, however, report feeling alone and isolated in their community after a diagnosis. I certainly have had sessions where, I have that going through my mind too, but this isolation is heightened when people in their community assume that the person is no longer capable, or perhaps they're afraid of how they'll start behaving, or they're worried that they won't know what to say or how to respond if the person does need support. But a diagnosis of dementia does not mean the end of a meaningful life. People living with dementia want to continue to enjoy the activities that we all love, stay involved in our community, and to be seen as valuable and rightful members of society. Education, resources, and open conversations about dementia can help all the community members feel more confident in reaching out and supporting a person affected by dementia, both the people who are living with dementia and their helpful care partners. And this may help people living with dementia to feel less embarrassed about the changes they're experiencing and reach out for the support that they need. So thank you again for taking the time to learn more about dementia and how you can better support people in your community that may be affected by dementia. You are taking a very important step in creating a more welcome, supportive, inclusive, and dementia-friendly society. Thanks for listening.
In today's presentation, we have 4 main learning objectives. First, we'll introduce you to the Dementia-Friendly Communities Initiative and why we all have a role to play in creating a more welcoming, supportive, and inclusive community for people living with dementia. Next, we'll spend some time exploring what dementia is, as well as what dementia is not. That is, some common myths and misconceptions about dementia. We'll also talk about the signs and symptoms of dementia and societal barriers for people affected by dementia. Following that, we will review some communication strategies you can use to reach out and help support a person who is affected by dementia. And finally, we will wrap up by discussing where you can go for more information, resources, and support. Our vision at the Alzheimer's Society of British Columbia is a world without Alzheimer's disease and other dementia. And that world begins with a society where people affected by dementia are welcomed, supported, and included. There are many ways that we are working to realize our vision, and the Dementia-Friendly Communities Initiative is just one. Our Dementia-Friendly Communities team engages members of the general public, as well as people who work in all sectors of the workplace to provide dementia education and support strategies that they can use to ensure their own communities, neighborhoods, organizations, and workplaces are welcoming and supportive of people who are affected by dementia. But what does it mean to be dementia-friendly? In a nutshell, a dementia-friendly community is a community that focuses on stigma reduction and the inclusion of people living with dementia. It is a place where people living with dementia feel supported by individuals, businesses, and local governments so that they are able to participate in their communities to the fullest extent possible. Dementia-friendly communities are defined by their social characteristics. For example, community members are dementia educated, able to recognize the signs of dementia, and are confident and willing to reach out and communicate with a person living with dementia. Dementia-friendly communities are also defined by their physical characteristics. For example, clear and legible signs are placed at eye level, and easy-to-use street furniture in styles familiar to people are chosen for public spaces. Being dementia-friendly means that you, your organization, or your community are working towards supporting, including, and welcoming all people affected by dementia, both people living with dementia and care partners alike. Let's take a few minutes to watch this short video from Dementia-Friendly Canada, which illustrates what being dementia-friendly can look like.
Did you know that more than 500,000 Canadians, like me, live with dementia? Or that 1 in 5 Canadians care for someone who lives with dementia? Like me, many people living with dementia still live in our communities after we are diagnosed. It isn't always easy, though. Often, we feel left out and worried about how we'll be treated by others. Sometimes people just don't understand what dementia is and how it affects the brain, or know what to do if we forget something or get confused. So they seem frustrated or dismissive, and sometimes the places we'd like to go are just more difficult to get around. I once got lost trying to find the washrooms in a restaurant because of the loud music, poor lighting, and confusing signs. But it doesn't have to be like this. Everyone in the community can play a part in helping people living with dementia feel welcome and in creating accessible and inclusive spaces for everybody to enjoy. When our communities are dementia-friendly, people living with dementia feel less worried about how we will be treated and more confident about going out. Have you ever thought about what it would be like to live with dementia in your community or workplace? Is your community supportive, inclusive, and accessible for people living with dementia? Is it dementia-friendly in ways that let people stay engaged in community life? Would you recognize the signs that someone may be living with dementia and be able to offer the right type of support? Would you be comfortable talking to someone if you knew they were living with dementia? Would you know how to respond if someone seemed confused or had trouble expressing themselves? Are the businesses, organizations, and public spaces in your community designed so people can use them independently without getting disoriented, lost, or experiencing stigma because they are living with dementia? People living with dementia shouldn't have to work harder than everyone else to stay a part of the community. Wouldn't it be great if the neighborhoods and communities that we all share were dementia-friendly? Together with the Alzheimer's Society and community members like you, let's keep challenging the stereotypes and building a dementia-friendly Canada where everyone feels welcomed and supported. Take the first step and visit alzheimer.ca/dementia-friendly Canada to learn more about Dementia-Friendly Canada. You'll find lots of information, education, and resources to help you and your organization become more dementia-friendly members of your community.
The video mentioned that 500,000 Canadians are currently living with dementia. As of 2022, we know that over 85,000 people in British Columbia are living with dementia. If current trends continue, that number is expected to almost double by the year 2030 and almost triple by the year 2050. We all have a role to play in creating a community that is understanding, accepting, and inclusive of people living with dementia. Starting with the people you know or strangers you may encounter in the community, this workshop is designed to give you the strategies and confidence you need to reach out, stay involved, and offer support. Let's shift our attention now to discussing what dementia is. One of the most common questions we hear at the Alzheimer's Society is, what is the difference between Alzheimer's disease and dementia? Dementia is an umbrella term for many types of disease that cause progressive physical changes in the brain, and Alzheimer's disease is one type of dementia. All types of dementia have some similarities and some features that make them distinct from the other types. Let's start with how each type of dementia is distinct from the others. There are 5 main groups of dementia, which are distinguished from one another by how the underlying disease impacts the brain. Alzheimer's disease is the most common type of dementia. There are many subtypes of Alzheimer's disease, but they are all caused by amyloid beta and tau protein deposits, which cause plaques and tangles in the brain. Vascular dementia is another common form of dementia, although not as common as Alzheimer's disease. It is typically caused by damage to the blood vessels of the brain. Frontotemporal dementia is a group of dementias that are characterized by disease that is active primarily in the frontal and temporal lobes of the brain. Lewy body dementia is a type of dementia that is associated with Lewy body deposits in the brain. We also have a large number of rarer dementias that do not fit into the other groups. This includes young onset dementia, where the diagnosis is made before the age of 65, dementia related to Parkinson's disease, dementia related to Huntington's disease, etc. It is also possible to have a mixed dementia, which means that there are 2 types of disease that are making changes in the brain. How the disease progresses may look different from one type of dementia to another. For example, vascular dementia may progress in a stepwise manner, whereas other types of dementia may progress in a more gradual decline. It's important to note that there are 2 things that all dementias have in common. All dementias are progressive or degenerative in nature. This means that the disease will advance and symptoms will worsen over time, and it is eventually fatal. It's also important to note that the changes that people experience are permanent and not reversible. Another way to look at how progressive diseases are related to symptoms of dementia is to look at it in a linear or sequential way. It all starts with the presence of a progressive degenerative disease which causes destructive protein or vascular changes in and around the brain cells. For example, Alzheimer's disease, vascular dementia, Lewy body dementia, etc. Research has indicated that these diseases may be present in the brain for years before we notice any observable symptoms of dementia. As we learned in the previous slide, each of these diseases has a distinct way that they impact the function of our brain cells, but over time, they all cause damage to brain cells and neural pathways in the brain, which leads to symptoms of dementia, such as memory loss, confusion and disorientation, communication changes, impaired judgment, behavior changes, and many others. Although this is not a very pleasant image to look at or discuss, it is important that we understand and recognize that a disease is causing changes to happen in the person's brain, and those physical changes are causing their symptoms. Oftentimes, a person living with dementia doesn't look any different on the outside, which makes it difficult for care partners, family members, and friends to make sense of their symptoms. In fact, we hear from people living with dementia that this is one of the most difficult reactions that they receive. "What do you mean you have dementia? You look fine." While there are several different diseases that cause dementia, they share many symptoms. Eventually, the damage to the brain cells caused by the disease leads to pronounced shrinking of the brain or atrophy. When you look at the brain on the right, you can see there are profound changes, big gaps and holes. The changes are permanent, and no amount of prompting, encouraging, or insisting we do can help a person who has dementia to remember something that they have forgotten, or to recognize that they are experiencing changes if they don't see it, or to relearn a skill that they have lost. Their brain may no longer have the capacity to adapt and change. So in order to stay connected, it is up to us to change and adapt. Now that we've spent some time discussing what dementia is, let's move on to talking about what dementia is not. That is, some of the more common myths and misconceptions that we hear about dementia. Many people have ideas about and fears of dementia, which may or may not be true. It is uncomfortable to talk about our fears, and it is human nature to avoid things that make us uncomfortable. However, it's important to bring these ideas out into the open and talk about dementia candidly. Why is this so important? Because many people have fears about getting dementia, which may be grounded in misunderstandings. Also, misunderstandings and fear about dementia can often lead people to act in a way that negatively impacts people living with dementia. This in turn can lead to feelings of shame and embarrassment for people affected by dementia and may prevent people from seeking a medical opinion, treatment, and the support that they need. In order to reduce everyone's fear and discomfort with dementia, we're going to dive right in. As we discuss some common myths about dementia, we invite you to think about images you've seen or heard about dementia in film or television, or things that you've heard about dementia through friends or family. What do these images bring up for you? What are your biggest concerns? Feel free to begin to explore your own attitudes, fears, concerns, and discomfort with dementia and how this may be influencing your actions. One of the more common myths we hear about dementia is a belief that dementia is part of the natural aging process. Dementia is not a part of natural aging. Dementia is different than natural age-related changes, even though age is a risk factor for developing dementia. If we were all to live to be 90 years old, approximately half of us would develop some type of dementia. But it is also true that many people live well beyond their 90s and don't ever develop dementia. Many people also express a fear of developing dementia if someone in their family has or had dementia. Most forms of Alzheimer's disease are not genetic. Genetics is often a question that comes up around Alzheimer's disease. For most people, Alzheimer's disease is not strictly genetic. Familial Alzheimer's disease does have a strong genetic link, but this counts for less than 5% of all cases diagnosed. This gene tends to cause young onset Alzheimer's disease, primarily diagnosed between the ages of 50 and 60, although it can be earlier. Sometimes people are concerned about a family history of Alzheimer's disease when in fact they have a family history of other medical conditions that are risk factors for dementia, such as cardiovascular disease, diabetes, or hypertension. This is why reducing our risk of these diseases also decreases our overall risk of developing dementia. But overall, the vast majority of people with Alzheimer's disease are diagnosed with sporadic Alzheimer's disease, which means that there is no direct genetic link. Another common misconception about dementia is that it is a disease that only affects older adults. However, we know that dementia can affect people from their 30s onwards. Dementia is a progressive, degenerative disease of the brain. While people over the age of 65 are more likely to develop dementia, it can occur in people under this age. When this happens, it's known as young onset dementia. You may have come across information about products or regimes that claim to prevent dementia. However, at this time, there is no proven prevention or cure for dementia. Currently, there are many promising international research studies regarding the prevention and cure of dementia, but there is still no certainty about this. Research has proven, however, that there are a number of risk factors, that could put people at higher risk of developing dementia, such as chronic medical conditions, inactivity, social isolation, and so on. This is why we tend to speak about risk reduction as opposed to prevention. There are also a number of protective factors that may help to reduce the risk of developing dementia as we age, and these include physical activity, cognitive and social activity, good sleep hygiene, protecting the head against trauma, and so on. You are never too old or too young to make lifestyle changes that might reduce your risk. Again, though, these factors are protective, not preventative. Sometimes people assume that memory loss means that one has dementia. But memory loss does not mean that you have dementia. As we age, many of us experience some change to our memory, like forgetting where we left our keys, forgetting where we parked the car, or not recalling the name of a colleague we worked with years ago. These are likely all signs of natural age-related memory loss. There are times when memory loss can begin to feel like something more than age-related change. For example, you do not recognize a familiar everyday item or what it is used for, or you have trouble remembering the names of your closest family members and friends. These types of changes should be discussed with your doctor, as they may be an indicator of a medical issue that needs to be addressed. Cardiovascular conditions, medication side effects, even dehydration are all examples of other medical conditions that may impact your cognitive function, and they may require immediate care. In the next part of our presentation, we will discuss signs and symptoms of dementia, and memory changes are only one part of the whole picture. If you would like more information on age-related memory loss and the warning signs of dementia, please refer to the Warning Signs of Dementia brochure that is available in the Helpful Resources document linked below this video. At times, people express a fear that a person living with dementia will begin acting in an unexpected or aggressive way. However, we know that dementia does not mean that the person living with dementia will become aggressive. While some people with dementia may react or respond to triggers in ways that may seem aggressive, it is important to acknowledge that not everyone with dementia becomes violent. The more we can learn about the triggers of responsive or reactive behaviors and how to adjust our own responses, the more likely our interactions will be positive and supportive in nature. If you want to learn more, I would recommend you look at our Understanding Behaviors recording found on the on-demand section of our website. There are times when people assume that a person living with dementia is not able to understand what is going on around them, possibly because they are getting support from a care partner, or they're having difficulty expressing themselves, or they don't seem to be engaged in the conversation. However, dementia does not mean that the person will no longer understand what is going on around them. Many people who are living with dementia are able to understand what is being said around them and about them, even if they have difficulty producing a response. It is important not to talk about a person living with dementia like they are not there, and to continue to include them in conversations as much as possible. In this presentation, we will be exploring communication strategies that you can use to help support your interactions. Finally, a diagnosis of dementia does not mean that the person will no longer have a meaningful life. It doesn't change what makes us each invaluable and unique individuals. The people and things we love, what motivates and inspires us, and our values all remain. Over time, a person living with dementia may have to adapt how they do things, but many continue to engage in their favorite activities, connect with the people they love, and contribute in meaningful ways to their family and community. We can all help support people to stay involved and connected in their communities. Now let's talk about what it might be like to live with dementia. We'll start with the challenges related to the changes caused by the disease. We've already mentioned a few of the more common signs and symptoms of dementia, but let's move on to a bigger list. As we go through this list, there are a few things to keep in mind. First, this is not a comprehensive list of every sign or symptom that a person living with dementia might experience on their journey. Rather, it is a list of some of the more common signs that you may see in the early stages, regardless of the type of dementia. This is also not a diagnostic list. That is, experiencing these things does not mean that someone definitely has dementia. If you or someone you know is experiencing similar signs and symptoms, it could be related to dementia or other medical issues and may warrant a discussion with a medical professional. Finally, many people who are affected by dementia tell us that these symptoms can fluctuate throughout the course of the day, and some days may be more challenging than others. Just because you notice a particular sign one day or in this moment, it does not mean that the person experiences that challenge to the same degree all the time. It's important to remember to make the most of the good days and find ways to adapt on the more difficult ones. Problems with memory and memory loss that affects day-to-day function. While it's natural to occasionally forget appointments, neighbors' names, or a key ingredient in a favorite recipe and remember them later, a person living with dementia may forget things more often and not remember them later, particularly things that have happened more recently. This is short-term memory loss. Difficulty performing familiar tasks. Many of us need reminders of how to carry out a task or complete an activity that is new to us. Learning to use a new app on your computer is a good example of this. A person living with dementia, however, may have trouble with routine tasks that have been familiar to them for most of their lives, such as brushing their teeth, making a cup of coffee, or a carpenter forgetting how to use their tools. Changes in ability to pay attention or stay focused. A person living with dementia may have trouble maintaining their attention or focus for as long as they used to. This is called sustained attention. They may also have trouble filtering out background noise or visual stimulation in a busy environment, which can be overwhelming and make it difficult to focus on a task or conversation. A person living with dementia may also experience communication challenges, which can take many forms, such as difficulty finding the right words. While everyone has trouble finding the right words sometimes, a person living with dementia may forget simple words or substitute words, which can make their sentences difficult to understand. A person living with dementia may also experience challenges following conversations. From time to time, people may become distracted and lose their place in a conversation, but a person living with dementia may be a step behind in the conversation, or they may reply in an inappropriate way. It is also possible that a person living with dementia will have challenges understanding the meaning of what they are hearing or reading. Problems with abstract thinking. A person living with dementia may have difficulty with tasks that require abstract thinking. This includes making sense of symbols and images, for example, symbols that appear on signs, and understanding and working with numbers. Using metaphors, such as "it's raining cats and dogs," may be understood for the literal meaning, "there are pets falling from the sky," which can also make it difficult to understand some types of humor. A person living with dementia may experience changes in their judgment. For example, they may wear heavy clothing on a hot day. They may find it difficult to determine what to keep and what to throw out, resulting in their space becoming cluttered, or they may respond in an unexpected way in a social situation. Disorientation in time or place. It's natural to forget the day of the week or your destination for a moment, but a person living with dementia can become lost in a familiar place, even within their building or home. A person living with dementia may also become disoriented to time and become confused about the season, the year, or what era of their life they're living. Vision, visual, spatial, and perceptual changes. While these types of changes are related, they are all distinct brain functions that can be impacted by dementia. Vision relates to our ability to physically see and take in visual information through our eyes. A person living with dementia may experience diminished peripheral vision and decreased eye movement, which makes it difficult to track and gauge the speed of moving objects. Visual spatial abilities and perception relate to how our brain is aware of and interprets visual information. People living with dementia may have trouble with depth perception, finding objects in a busy or cluttered background, recognizing familiar objects, or may make visual mistakes such as misinterpreting shadows. Loss of initiative. A person living with dementia may have trouble initiating an activity, meaning that they find it difficult to get started and may appear to be stumped as to what the first step is. Sometimes we can misinterpret this as the person is being passive or apathetic, but a gentle cue or prompt may be all they need to start an activity. Physical changes. Dementia can also impact a person's ability to move about their environment and manipulate objects. In the early stages, you may notice challenges with balance, coordination, and ability to handle objects with their hands. One of the biggest challenges experienced by people affected by dementia is the stigma and discrimination that is still quite prevalent around the disease. And it is one of the biggest barriers for people living with dementia to live fully with dignity and respect. Even though 500,000 Canadians live with dementia, many feel excluded, ignored, and treated differently for something that is beyond their control. Stigma is experienced in every community to varying degrees. Stigma is defined as assumptions about a person based on their actions or appearance. Sometimes people make assumptions about another person's abilities and capabilities based on the diagnosis of dementia alone. Discrimination occurs when people act on these assumptions in a way that leads the person to being treated as incapable and feeling judged or deficient in some way. Many times, stigma and discrimination occur because people are acting on assumptions, fear, discomfort, stereotypes, and misconceptions they have about the disease. Stigma can take on many forms. You may be surprised to hear that many people living with dementia experience stigma amongst professionals, including medical professionals. Assumptions about their abilities as soon as people hear they have a diagnosis of dementia. Friends and family backing away. People minimizing their signs and symptoms because they look okay. Perhaps this happens because the topic is too uncomfortable to discuss openly, but it can have the effect of the person feeling dismissed and ignored. Jokes about their changing abilities. Stigma by association, meaning that the care partner can experience very similar social isolation, avoidance, and withdrawal of close family and friends. Over time, stigma, discrimination, embarrassment, and shame have a profound impact on a person's confidence and willingness to stay engaged in their community, involved in their favorite activities, and in touch with the people who matter most to them. Social engagement is so important for brain and emotional resiliency. Many people living with dementia and care partners have described feeling very lonely and disconnected. In addition to loneliness, social withdrawal, and isolation, stigma about dementia can lead someone to ignore or hide potential symptoms rather than seeking out a diagnosis, which may mean that they miss out on early treatment opportunities and support. We know that the earlier someone gets a diagnosis, the better they can plan for the journey ahead. Asking for support means they get the help they need. Staying connected to the community around them means they can stay active and engaged with it for longer, something that helps to keep us cognitively and emotionally resilient. For more information on how to recognize and respond to stigma, I highly encourage you to check out the Flipping Stigma on Its Ear toolkit, which can be found in the Helpful Resources document linked below this video. How can you help? You may know someone in your circle of friends who is affected by dementia, or someone who lives in your building, someone you see occasionally at the golf course or volunteer with, or perhaps you interact with a person living with dementia through your line of work. Regardless, we all have a role to play in creating and contributing to a dementia-friendly community. Ensuring that you and those around you know how to recognize dementia and communicate in a supportive way is key to creating a society that is supportive and inclusive of people living with dementia. Let's start by making note of the language we use when talking about dementia. You might have noticed that throughout this presentation I have been using the term people living with dementia, as it is language that indicates a person is more than their diagnosis, and it also avoids assumptions about the person's abilities or experience. For example, we avoid language to indicate that the person is a dementia patient, or that they suffer from dementia, or that they are afflicted with dementia. Similarly, while it is acceptable to say that someone has dementia or is living with dementia, it is not acceptable to say that one is demented or senile. People that support a person living with dementia are referred to as care partners. When we use the term people affected by dementia, we are referring to both people who are living with dementia and their care partners. Given what we now know about the signs and symptoms of dementia and what it might be like for the person living with dementia, let's review 10 tips for communication. Some of these strategies may or may not be relevant to your specific situation at this time. Please feel welcome to adapt these strategies for your situation, and know that at times when communication appears to be breaking down, these just might be the strategies that can help us stay connected. Tip number 1, set the stage. If you have the opportunity before your interaction, take a moment to consider these things that will help both parties to have a positive encounter. If you know the person, are you aware that they use glasses or a hearing aid? Are they wearing these items? If not, is there a way for you to gently and respectfully suggest that they put them on? For example, you may notice your friend's glasses sitting on the table when you enter their apartment. After saying hello and connecting with them, you might say, "Would you like me to get your glasses for you?" It may also help to show them the glasses as you are asking, but we'll talk about that in more detail in a few minutes. At this point, it also can help to take a moment to assess where you are at emotionally. Are you feeling relaxed, or are you feeling a little rushed or frustrated? Our state of mind is often reflected in our body language, tone of voice, and even in the pitch of our voice, and this may be the most predominant thing the other person tunes into. Set the tone of the interaction by taking a moment to become aware of your own state of mind and prepare yourself to be fully present in this moment. It is also helpful at this stage to pause to take a quick assessment of the other person's nonverbal body language. Did they look upset, confused, fearful? This will help you to start to understand the other person's reality and how you might approach them. If the person is upset or emotional, it can help to establish a calm, caring atmosphere. Your calmness may help to settle the person. The second tip is approach from the front and get the person's attention. Approach the person slowly, calmly, and from the front. Keep in mind that the person may be experiencing vision or visual spatial changes and may only be aware of items and people that are directly in their line of vision. You may inadvertently startle them if you approach them from the side or behind, even if you are right beside them or you've made some noise to let them know that you're approaching. If you know their name, use it, introduce yourself, and ask the person if they would like your help. Make eye contact by facing the person directly when speaking. This may require that you position yourself so that you are within their line of sight. For example, you may need to sit or crouch in front of them to be at eye level. This is another good opportunity to assess what their body language is telling you. Is this a good time? Do they recognize you? Do they feel threatened or afraid? In this moment, it may help to offer to bring the person to a quiet place. People living with dementia may have difficulty paying attention or filtering out excess stimulation in a busy environment. This can happen in an environment that has a lot of background noise, for example, traffic, voices, or music. It can happen in an environment where there's lots of activity, for example, crowds of people or items moving about, or in an environment that has a lot of visual stimulation, for example, blinking lights or areas with lots of clutter. You may notice that the person looks agitated, withdrawn, or overwhelmed. Moving to a quieter, less stimulating environment may help the person focus on the interaction. Speak clearly and share one message at a time. Keep in mind that a person living with dementia may require longer time to process information and come up with a response. It can be very awkward to slow your speech down in a way that does not come across as speaking down to the person. Rather than making a conscious effort to speak slowly, focus on taking the time to enunciate each word carefully and clearly. You may have to allow the person extra time to absorb one sentence or instruction before moving on to the next. After sharing a message or giving an instruction, wait for a cue from the person's body language that they have understood you before carrying on. Break instructions into small, simple tasks. Allow time for response. This point is connected to the strategy above. Additionally, you may want to keep in mind that a person living with dementia may need more time to process what you have said and more time to formulate a response. It may take an extra moment or two for the person to gather their thoughts. If you're sharing a few ideas or providing instructions, allow time between each and wait for an indicator that the person is with you. This may be apparent by their body language. For example, making eye contact, a smile, or a head nod. If you notice that the person is attempting but having difficulty responding, you may ask if the person would like help finding a word, finishing a sentence, or telling a story. They may be relieved to receive the help, or they may feel they want more time to try to express themselves in their own way. It may help to count to 5, silently in your head, of course, before asking. While waiting, try to remain encouraging and positive, which will help to convey to the other person that you value what they have to say and inspire them to keep trying. Here's an example that employs the two strategies above. I have just called my brother to invite him for lunch. When he answers the phone, I start right in with, "Hey, it's your favorite sister calling. I want to take you for lunch at the 50s Diner, just like the good old days. What are you doing next Thursday?" Instead, I could try a more straightforward approach where I speak clearly and introduce one topic or idea at a time. For example, "Hello, it's Anna calling." I then wait for a response before introducing the next idea. "I was just thinking of how we used to go to the 50s Diner for lunch." Again, I pause and wait for an indication that we are on the same wavelength. Then I might finish with, "Would you like to go for lunch with me?" This is a good time to reassess and see if more information can be shared at this point, or if we can leave the rest of the details for later, maybe at a time when we are both in person. Show and speak. To help illustrate and augment your message, use actions, objects, and gestures as well as words. Adding a visual cue to your message can help convey your meaning. In this way, you are giving both visual and auditory information that may help the other person understand the meaning of your message. For example, if you are asking if they would like a cup of coffee, point to their mug, bring the coffee pot to them, or mime the act of drinking. You may also let them smell the coffee, as the familiar aroma may be enough to help convey your intent. They may have difficulty using or understanding words, but may recognize the object or task if they see it. Use closed-ended questions. If you notice that the person you are speaking with is having a hard time answering an open-ended question, you may try asking in a more straightforward way. Open-ended questions typically begin with words like what, where, why, how, when, tell me about, or describe. They can be difficult to answer because these types of questions require the brain to comprehend what you are asking, choose from a wide range of options, and then formulate a response. Closed-ended questions are a little more straightforward in that often the answer is embedded in the question. There are two ways to ask a closed-ended question. You can offer the person limited, for example, 2 or 3 options to choose from, or you can ask a yes or no question. Consider the following example. We walk into a coffee shop and are staring up at a huge billboard with more than 50 menu items to choose from. I turn to my companion and ask, "What would you like to drink?" In light of all the options, this might be overwhelming and confusing. I might try a simpler approach by starting off with, "Would you like a coffee or tea?" That is, offering them limited options. This will help my companion to narrow down the options and give them a prompt for how to answer. An even more straightforward approach would be to ask a yes or no question. Relying on what I know about my companion, I know that they often prefer coffee over tea, so I may ask, "Would you like a coffee?" This is a yes or no question. It can be helpful to think of questions hierarchically as the illustrations suggest. The simplest questions to answer are yes or no questions, followed by questions with limited 2 or 3 options. The most difficult questions to answer are open-ended questions. Respond to feelings, not to stories. There may be times in your interactions when you're having a hard time understanding what the other person is trying to say to you, or what they are saying to you does not seem to be rational or true, or what they are asking for is not possible. For example, they want to see a relative or pet that passed away some time ago. In these situations, you may not know how to respond or how to calm the situation. It can help to listen actively and carefully to what the person is trying to say and try to respond to the emotional tone of the statement. You may not understand all of the words being said, but you may recognize emotions such as joy, excitement, fear, or anger. To fully listen to the message being conveyed, we need to use our ears, our eyes, and our minds. The feelings are always right, even if they are about stories that are not real from our point of view. Start by acknowledging and validating their feelings by responding with something like, "I can see that you're really upset by this," or "You seem really worried," or even, "You seem really excited, but I'm having a hard time understanding." Taking the time to acknowledge the other person's feelings can go a long way to help them feel heard and that you are on their side. Next, you can take some steps to reassure them that you're there to help, that you're interested in what they have to say, and that you will help them figure this out. Let's look at another example to illustrate how this strategy can be used. You have made arrangements to drive a friend to their dentist appointment. When you arrive at their home at the agreed upon time, you find that they are caught by surprise. They didn't know they had an appointment, they look overwhelmed, and say that you didn't tell them anything about this appointment. They do not want to go. In this example, it might be helpful to acknowledge that they feel frustrated, which is their reality, rather than try to convince them that you had spoken about this appointment and made the plans yesterday, which is your reality. In this case, it appears that they have forgotten about the appointment and may be feeling a little out of control with what is going on in their world. Rather than launching into an explanation that you just spoke to them the day before to arrange the ride, you can try to meet them in their reality. It may also help to accept the blame, even when you did nothing wrong. For example, a helpful response may sound something like, "I can see that I've caught you off guard. I'm sorry, I must have forgotten to call and remind you of this appointment. We have plenty of time. Can I help you find your coat?" In a nutshell, avoid arguing over the facts. This is often a lose-lose situation. Both parties will be frustrated, and neither will be right in the end because the argument is taking place in two separate realities. A better strategy is try to join the person with dementia in their reality as much as possible. We often use the saying, "Connect, don't correct," to remind ourselves that it is often more productive and more positive in our interactions to put the priority on connecting with the other person rather than making sure the facts are correct. And finally, repeat or try again later. If you are having difficulty understanding the person, try repeating or rephrasing what they said, or asking if you have understood correctly. This may help the person further clarify what they are trying to tell you. The signs and symptoms of dementia can fluctuate from day to day, even hour to hour, and this may simply not be the best time for the other person to be having this conversation. If there is a communication breakdown now, it might be helpful to save this conversation for later. Now that we've reviewed some communication strategies, let's take a minute to view this example of a dementia-friendly interaction.
This person looks lost. I should see if they need help. I'm going to approach them from the front and make eye contact so I don't startle them. And then I'll introduce myself and ask if they need any help. Hi, my name is Andrew.
Hi,
Do you need help finding something?
I have an art class and all these halls look the same. Do you know how to get to Art Studio B?
Oh yeah, it's actually around the side of the building. I'm headed that way now if you want me to walk with you.
Thank you, that would be great.
Oh, okay. It's around here.
There are simple actions we can all take to include and support people living with dementia. To learn more about what you can do, please visit alzheimer.ca/dementia-friendly-Canada.
As we are coming to the end of our presentation today, please know that there are many more resources available that will help you to expand your knowledge of dementia and explore other ways that you can help support people affected by dementia. If you would like more information on recognizing and responding to dementia-related stigma, I encourage you to check out the Flipping Stigma Toolkit. This toolkit was developed by an action group of people living with dementia to address stigma and discrimination. You'll find a lot of great information for people living with dementia, care partners, friends, family, and healthcare professionals. And the website can be found in our helpful resources document below. If you would like more information on dementia, communication strategies, or understanding behavior, visit the Alzheimer's Society of BC website at www.alzheimerbc.org. If you search On Demand, you'll be taken to a list of all of our past recordings on a wide range of dementia topics. If you search Webinars, you'll be taken to a list and registration link for our upcoming live webinars that occur every Wednesday afternoon. If you search Print Resources, you will be taken to a page that lists all of the Alzheimer's Society of BC publications. These are all free and downloadable. We also welcome you to visit our dementia-friendly community pages, where you will find more information and resources for workplaces and municipalities. For more information, resources, or support for people affected by dementia, the Alzheimer's Society of BC's First Link Community Services are here to provide you with more information, resources, and support. If you have any dementia-related questions, are in need of support, or would like more information on our programs, please call our First Link Dementia Helpline. These numbers are also located in the helpful resources document. Thank you for listening to our presentation today and for taking the first step in creating a more welcoming, inclusive, and dementia-friendly society.